So this is a sound test and a short introduction to a book I'm reading on Paul Dirac, who's a Bristol boy. He gave us the Dirac equation, I suppose, the physical significance of which I'm not too sure of, or at least that's the reason I'm reading the book. Stalin is in conversation with H.G. Wells, he of 2000 and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea fame, I believe, and also them. Anyway, Stalin says, "You, Mr. Wells, evidently start out with the assumption that all men are good. I, however, do not forget that there are many wicked men." This was reported in the New Statesman, 27th of October 1934. Moscow, chapter 20 of The Strangest Man by Graham Farmelo. Chapter 20. Moscow was beckoning again. For the following 4 months Dirac's diary was empty, and he was determined to spend most of that time with Kapitsa. Dirac knew that the secret police read his letters to Anna Kapitska, and that he would probably be followed when he was in Moscow. He told her, "If anyone follows me around in Moscow, he will get some long walks." Dirac and Tam had intended to spend the summer hiking and climbing together in the Caucasus, and Dirac hoped to see one of the allegedly productive factories and the new Dniprodzhezh hydroelectric power station, one of the proudest achievements of Soviet engineering. But when Anna Kapitska asked Dirac to cancel the trip in order to support her husband, Dirac shelved his plans and declared himself to be at the service of her and her husband. "I am ready for anything." He travelled to Moscow via Barclay, where Oppenheimer found that Dirac was tight-lipped as ever about physics. 2 of Oppenheimer's students were elated when he told them that their British guest was prepared to hear their ideas about quantum field theory, which built on his work. During their 15-minute presentation, Dirac said nothing. Afterwards, the students braced themselves for his perceptive comments, but there was an agonizingly long silence, eventually broken by Dirac when he asked them, "Where is the post office?" The students offered to take him there and suggested that he could tell them what he thought of their presentation. Dirac said, "I cannot do 2 things at once." On the afternoon of the 3rd of June 1935, Dirac waved goodbye to Oppenheimer and boarded the Japanese MS Asuma Bora. He settled into his private cabin and prepared to sail through the mist to San Francisco, catching sight of the half-constructed Golden Gate Bridge, and then on to Japan, China, and the USSR. Mansi, meanwhile, was lounging around in Budapest, awaiting the arrival of her first car, a 6-cylinder Mercedes-Benz, bought for her by her father. She had persuaded Dirac to visit her in Budapest at the end of his trip. Her complaints that he did not respond to her questions drew from Dirac another tabulated response. "Have you played ping-pong with pretty girls? ? With one pretty girl. Most of the passengers were Japanese. The Japanese girls do not play ping-pong." Have you flirted? ? No, she was too young, 15 years old, but you ought not to mind if I did. Should I not make the most of what you taught me? Why were you so derisive? Answer: I am sorry, but I cannot help it at times. 6 weeks after he had set sail from the USA, Dirac arrived in Moscow railway station. Even he, with his Gandhian indifference to his surroundings, must have been struck by the contrast between the fresh early summer of Princeton and the stench of rotten eggs that hung over the Soviet capital. It was no longer the city that he had seen 4 years before, but a reeking, overcrowded metropolis. The playwright Eugene Leon described the vicious ooze of Moscow's dung-coloured people. Not ugly, but incredibly soiled, patched, drab, the odour and colour of ingrained poverty, fetid bundles of stale clothes. Dirac stayed there only briefly. He had arranged to spend most of his time in the more agreeable ambience of the Kapitska's dacha, or summer home, in the village of Bolshevo, 35 miles south of the city. Kapitsa was looking forward to seeing his English friend, though the tone of his comments to his wife indicates that he did not fully reciprocate the intensity of Dirac's affection. But a day after Dirac's arrival, Kapitska appeared to have changed his mind, and he wrote to her: "We came here with Tam and have been walking, boating and talking ever since. I haven't had such a pleasant time with anyone up to now. Dirac treats me so simply and so well that I can feel what a good and loyal friend he is. We talk about all sorts of things, and this has been very refreshing. Dirac's arrival has revived my memories of respect and reputation that I enjoyed in Cambridge." So, that's the soundtrack for this evening from the field of study.